Patch 1.2 has been out for a few days now, and a new meta is starting to settle. There's been lots of attention on how to impact Burn Aggro and other S-tier decks like Heimer Control and Ezreal Karma, but there's also been a number of decks with extremely high win rates with extremely low play rates. I will talk through the top 10 win rates from patch 1.2 so far. Please note that there were many extremely similar decks that appeared in this top 10 list, so I've only taken the deck with the highest win rate for the purpose of this list. This deck is all about drawing and focuses on early game aggro, using the drawing mechanic to help fuel this aggression. As you can see from the screen, all the cards have a cost of 4 or below, and the cards in this deck can be split into two main sections: draw cards and burn cards. The two champions in this deck are Ezreal and Twisted Fate. Ezreal can easily be leveled up with targeted burn spells like Mystic Shot, whereas Twisted Fate relies on draw cards such as Pick a Card. This deck also relies on the recently buffed Slotbot, who gains 1 health for each card you drew last round, and then shuffles his stats around, perfectly synergizing with the draw cards in this deck. There are 3 copies of Pilfered Good which allow you to draw an opponent's card. Black Market Merchant lets you reduce the cost of the opponent's card by 1. Both of these cards have Plunder, and this can easily be activated with your burn spells like Parlay and Static Shock. This is a variation of the standard Deep Sea Monsters deck, but focuses more on killing your own units. Deep decks usually struggle in early game, but this deck has more early game support to cover this. To help you get to late game, Thorny Toad and Dead Bloom Wonder both help you toss cards, whilst offering ways to heal your Nexus, so aggro decks don't wipe you out early. This healing is continued in mid-game with Withering Wail and Grasp of the Undying. Maokai and Fresh can take advantage of all your cards' deaths. The mix of tossing and death can even lead for Maokai leveling up much earlier than normal. If you make it to late game, Nautilus and Terror of the Tides are there to close the game. These work perfectly with Atrocity, which can be targeted on your opponent's Nexus to win the game rather cheekily. This is a very standard mid-range deck that features some of Noxus's Overwhelm support to help make those combat trades even more favourable for you. Your ramp to mid-game should be smooth with 30 cards costing less than 3. Lots of cards take advantage of the quick attack keyword, with Lucian and Senna being the most notable examples. This deck also features Legion Drummer from Noxus to give quick attack to units in the deck such as Grizzled Ranger. Challenger units such as Fleet Feather Tracker and Swift Ring Lancer can challenge the cards you don't want your quick attack units facing. The main downside of quick attack is when you can't finish off an opponent in one go. Kaito the Arm and Might allows your units to gain Overwhelm and additional power, ensuring they finish off units, whilst dealing additional damage to your opponent's Nexus. Darius is in the deck to close the game when your opponent hopefully has less than 10 Nexus health. This is another deck that revolves around killing your units, but features some Freljord support instead for a powerful late game finish. Your early game should revolve around the last breath keyword with Hapless Aristocrat and Avasran Sentry. This can be used to start building up your death tally early. Spiderlings are a key part of this deck with Elise and Vile Feast generating them easily. The aim of this deck is to use these to block attacks. You can use these as targets for Blighted Caretaker's effect and level up Fresh easily. By late game, you should have a number of deaths and can summon They Who Endure, who gains 1 health and power for each death. This should be high as it will count every spider and sapling death. Use this and Tryndamere to win through Overwhelm. Atrocity can be used on both of these cards to deal damage to the opponent's Nexus if combat is proving tricky. This deck is all about dealing non-combat damage through Bilgewater's tools to easily level up Swain to allow an easy mid to late finish. With spells such as Parlay and Death's Hand, you should have no issue dealing easy bits of damage to the opponent's Nexus. These also work perfectly with all the Power Keg support cards such as Dreadway Deckhand and Petty Officer to increase the damage your burn spells do even further. Twisted Fate's Destiny cards also count as non-combat damage, so this synergizes perfectly with the power kegs, as well as helping Swain level up efficiently. To help level up Twisted Fate quickly, the deck also includes Yordle Grifter and Pilfered Goods to increase the draw rate. In late game, you should have the Leviathan and Riptide Rex, who deal huge amounts of non-combat damage at ease. You will have no issue closing the game with these cards. This is a strange deck that revolves around death, but doesn't actually feature a single champion. It's primarily Shadow Isles, but features cards from Demacia, which also work around killing your own units. It features standard followers like the Undying and Cursed Keeper that benefit from being killed. Kill these cards with spells like Glimpse Beyond, or card effects like Blighted Caretaker. Vanguard Redeemer and Radiant Guardian effects both activate after one of your followers has died. You should have no problem activating these effects in this deck. As you actively want your units to die, single combat can be used to kill one of your own units, whilst taking out an opponent at the same time. Due to all the revival effects this deck has, you should have a fairly full board. Use Tiana Crown Guard's Rally to finish off your opponent in late game with a full board. You can easily replace some of the followers with champions like Callista and Fresh if you have a little more budget to play with. Like the previous deck, this is themed around killing your units as well. This deck features support from 10 Noxus cards instead, and uses some champions as well. 23 of the cards have a cost of 3 or under, so you'll be looking for a very aggressive start with Hapless Aristocrat and Legion Grenadier. If one of your followers is going to die, use one of the 3 Noxan Favors to sacrifice it in return for dealing an additional 3 damage to your opponent. Also use Glimpse Beyond on units that are going to die in order to draw 2 cards. This will help you get access to the cards you need quicker for a smoother ramp to mid to late game. This deck also has fairly strong mid to late game, with Neverglade Collector draining health from your opponent whenever a unit dies, and the Rekindler to summon one of your dead champions. This deck also features 3 Fresh and 3 Darius, so this should give you plenty of targets for him to revive with. It is no surprise that this deck has a higher win rate after Vladimir's recent buff. It revolves around your unit surviving battle and gaining buffs as a result of not dying. This deck has a lot of early game aggression with cards like Imperial Demolilist and Crimson Disciple who work hand in hand with each other. Use Demolitionist's effect on Disciple to deal full damage to your opponent's Nexus. Whenever a unit is about to die, save it with Transfusion. Deal 1 damage to the healthier unit to help another survive. If used on Unscarred Reaver, it will gain an additional 3 power while saving another ally. The late game version of this card is Scarmother Vira, who can single-handedly win you the game. Make sure she is the target for every 1 damage you give your cards, and her Overwhelm will quickly win you the game. When paired with Vladimir's leveled up ability, your opponent won't stand a chance. This deck is about damaging your opponent's Nexus on different rounds to easily level up Sejuani, and optimize the damage dealt through Misfortune. The Plunder keyword is key in this deck, and can easily be activated through the 3 warning shots you have. If this wasn't enough, Yordle Griffer can generate an additional 3 warning shots, so you'll always be able to pull off Plunder. The vulnerable keyword can make your opponent engage in fights they do not want. In early game, Hired Gun can start off the process, with Sheriff Larissa Rose taking us into the late game. This synergizes well with Misfortune's effect as it will activate, making your opponent have extremely unfavorable fights. Most of your later game cards also have Plunder, with Riptide Rex and the Tusk Raider being 2 powerful notable examples. This deck contains 3 Riptide Rex and will be looking to use its effect to close the game. This is extremely similar to the previous Shadow Isles Freljord deck, and is also revolved around killing your own units, featuring support from Freljord. This deck also features support from Elise, who can rack up her debt quickly by generating Spiderlings. Spiderlings are a key part of this deck, with Elise and the Hapless Aristocrat generating them easily. The aim of this deck is to use these to block attacks to buff up They Who Endure in late game. This deck has more of a late game focus than the previous Shadow Isles Frejord deck, with cards like Withering Whale and Neverglade Collector using healing to your Nexus to help you survive till later in the game. Ideally, you should throw everything into the mid-game combats so your opponent has a fairly empty board. The effect of Raza the Sunderer can take out these cards even though it targets the weakest cards, and it shouldn't matter due to the small number of targets that the effect has. To finish off, summon a buffed up They Who Endure to win with Overwhelm or Atrocity when combat is proving challenging. Watch out though, as Purify can remove They Who Endure's buff, rendering this deck completely useless. Thank you once again for listening to the end, and I hope this gave you a good insight into the decks that are strong in patch 1.2. Once again, please like and subscribe, and see you next time.